I was so unfulfilled. I was so unhappy. It got to a point where... Hello everybody, welcome to my channel, Mary's Cup of Tea. I am so glad that you are here with me today because I'm about to share a part of my life that I don't share very often. And that part is my experience in bikini fitness competitions and my experience in the fitness industry as a whole. So the reason why I don't talk about this very much on my platform is actually for two reasons. One, I'm a little bit nervous to be judged and labeled negatively. And I know that I can't hush myself in order to please other people, but I do get a little bit nervous talking about my experience because a lot of people may disagree. And the second reason why I don't talk about it very much is because I try to keep my platform positive and uplifting. And like I mentioned before, this was more of a negative time in my life, and I don't really want to put that burden out there. But nevertheless, recently I've had this urge, like strong, it felt like a strong like calling that I have to share my story, that I have to talk about this, that I'm blessed to have this experience because I can share the good, the bad, and the ugly with women out there who are struggling with their body image, who are comparing themselves to these fitness competitors and thinking that they're not worthy because they see something else as this ideal and this idea of perfection. And because I've been on this side, this ideal fitness competitor kind of perfect body side, and I've seen the depths of it, and I've learned that everything is not what it seems. So I sit here before you to really share that and really like drill that in your head, that that world is not real. So to begin, I just want to forewarn you guys that I think this video will be a rather long one because clearly I get really passionate about this. So I am going to split this up into 2 parts, maybe 3 parts, probably 2 parts. So make sure to hit subscribe below because next week when I post part 2, YouTube will send you a notification that I posted and we can be YouTube friends. And as always, comment any thoughts, comments, questions. That way I can address them in future videos. I could even address them in part 2 or part 3 of this sequel. So anyways, let's get started. So just for organizational purposes, I am going to talk about why I started competing, and then I'll proceed to talk about why I quit competing. So let's talk about why I started competing. I started going to this local gym in my town, and at the time I was a ballet dancer. I mean, I was a dancer, but I focused mainly on ballet. And growing up, I had a pretty shaky relationship with food and my body. And I grew up in a society and in a town where people were very focused on dieting. They were very focused on what they look like. And this included my peers and the children at school, and also the parents of my peers and the adults that surrounded us. So basically I grew up in a place where everybody cared about what they look like, and everybody cared about what everybody else looked like, and they were always talking about what diet they were doing or exercise program. So this has been kind of drilled into my head since I was little. And when I started doing ballet and I started dancing, the need to be thin hit so hard. And I just started getting really insecure. I was always in a leotard and tights. I was always overanalyzing my body, and I developed a very restrictive, disordered relationship with food when I was probably about 12, when I really got really into dance. So I already had this like underlying kind of insecurities about my body image. And then fast forward to when I was about 15 years old, I joined a gym. And this gym just happened to be on the lower floor of my dance studio. So I had my dance studio up top and the gym at the bottom. So it was just great because I would run 2 miles to the gym. I would work out for like 2 hours, and then I would go straight to dance, which is very demanding, for like another 4 hours. So it was a little crazy. And meanwhile, I was running on like turkey slices and a cheese stick. And then I would come home and I would have this like appetite and I would be just starving. And I now know that that was like bulimia and binge eating, like coming home and stuffing myself in that way to do it all over and restrict again the next day. So this has already been going on. So then when I found competing, it was introduced to me at this gym I went to. It kind of early on legitimized my eating disorder and my disordered relationship with food, because I just felt normal because everybody else was tracking what they ate. Everybody else was working out for hours a day. Everybody else was on the grind. And they were mostly adults. And I even remember this one time when I shared with one of my trainers, like way early on, I was like, I don't know if I should be doing this because sometimes I will eat and feel the urge to like throw it up. And at the time I was like really bulimic, but I wasn't gonna admit it. So I kind of just like eased into this conversation with somebody that I trusted at the time. And I remember their response was, oh my gosh, that's totally okay. Like, I do the exact same thing. And if you want an easy way to like throw up your food, then just eat ice cream because it's soft coming back up and it doesn't burn your throat. So no joke, this came from a prominent competitor in the fitness industry that told me this when I shared with him my awful eating disorder. So I mean, that should have been a big old warning sign, but like I said, I was young and I was so insecure about my eating disorder, what I was going through, that I just felt so normal. Like competing just normalized my issues. It just normalized like being obsessed with my body image, and it normalized eating in this weird disordered way, and then having an awful eating disorder. So there was that. That's one of the reasons why I started. And then as I started working out at this gym more and I started getting super fit and I had abs, and people would comment on it. People would say like, wow, you look amazing, or you're so dedicated, or I wish I could do what you do, or just all these comments, right? And all this external validation. And that becomes addicting. Like, that people always commenting on your body, and especially it being this thing that you can somewhat manipulate. So meaning like people are commenting on something that like of course you worked really hard for, and the more they validate it, the more you want to work harder to get more of that validation, if that makes sense. So then anytime somebody would express concern about what I was doing to my body, like if it was my family or close friends that kind of saw the disordered parts of it, anytime somebody would comment, I'd just be like, you don't get it. I'm dedicated. You don't get it. You don't know because you could never do it. You're only expressing concern because you can't do what I do. So I would get very egotistical about it, not gonna lie. From there, it was mainly about the attention. I did one show, I was still in high school, people would ask me questions, my social media started blowing up, I got the attention that I sought, and I became addicted to it. So I'm not gonna go into the in-between parts right now, but please leave me questions below about anything you wanna hear about more in depth. I would be more than happy to create a video about that. But right now I'm gonna go into why I quit competing. The reasons why I quit competing were the same reasons why I started competing. There was one show that I did where afterwards I just like hit total rock bottom, and for me that looked like being very depressed, having anxiety. My eating disorder got worse, like just so bad that I felt terrible. I didn't leave my dark apartment. I didn't want to see anybody. I was eating so much, and I couldn't stop binge eating, and I knew something was wrong, and I just knew. That's when my body was like telling me. And then after that, I still decided to push myself even harder, and I was preparing for another show. And then like literally a week before this other show, like the binge eating started happening again, except this time it was like I couldn't control what I was doing whatsoever. Like I would just eat from morning to night, and I just felt like my body was just screaming at me to stop the restrictive behaviors, because they were turning me into this. This was the other side of it. And because of that, I realized that competing for a while normalized my eating disorder, when I don't want to live with an eating disorder. So I left. I stopped competing because I was like, I don't want to be around an industry and people that think that this behavior is normal, that joke about it, that laugh about it, that just legitimize it in every way and bond over it. This was like the craziest part. Like, people that I've experienced in the fitness industry bond about their food struggles. They bond about always thinking about food and planning their next cheat meal and binge eating and justifying bulimia and working out for like hours and hours and hours, and they would almost like compete with each other, like whose diet is worse or lower calorie. Or I remember conversations I would have like, oh, you're lucky, like I don't get rice in my diet, but you get rice in your diet. And so it was just this constant like egotistical competition of just like who could be the most effed up and who could justify it and legitimize it even more. So it was just nuts. And when I was going through a really deep dark time, it just hit me hard that this was the root cause of it, that this wasn't doing anything for my relationship with food and my relationship with my body. It was just exacerbating it on like a crazy exponential level. Like the more I competed, the more I restricted, the more I put all this pressure on what I looked like, the more I would swing the other direction and just completely destroy myself through my eating disorder. So there was that. And then the second reason why I quit competing was, remember that external validation that I talked about that I became addicted to? Well, as time went on, that external validation left me feeling very shitty. I was so unfulfilled. I was so unhappy. It got to a point where I found no pride in it whatsoever at all. So being constantly so attached to my body, it just left me very unfulfilled. And I realized that going on stage in a tiny little bikini to show my butt and receive this plastic trophy and receive this validation from some old guys judging it was very, very demeaning to my character. And I've never been that girl. That wasn't authentic to me. Like, what's authentic to me is talking to you guys right now from the heart and sharing my experience. But what's not authentic to me is being fake and striving for this impossible ideal and pretending like it was okay and I wasn't harming myself or anyone else in the process, and pretending like I was a good influence when really I was just contributing to diet culture and diet mentality. And it just really, really, really felt demoralizing. Those were the two reasons why I started and the two reasons why I quit competing, which ironically enough are basically the same reasons, except on one side I found an excuse for it, and on the other side I just realized how messed up it was. that is all I have for you guys today. Stay tuned for part 2 next week, and in the meantime, make sure to comment any and all of your questions. I would be more than happy to answer them in a separate video. And also make sure to like this video and subscribe if you enjoyed it. So I will see you guys all next week. Bye!